Hey, Zervin listeners, Love is Blind reunion live on Netflix. Let's see what happens.
Taking that out of context and spinning it and telling everyone that I said that it was a term. Whereas though I feel like we both were making jabs, and some of those jabs, she wasn't joking, because we can see in her text messages that were leaked, she thought that was true.
I'm confused. So there were leaked text messages, and he's saying that. Let me rewind.
So joking with someone and taking that out of context and spinning it and telling everyone that I said that it was a term.
Okay. So I think what he's saying is, from my perspective, I was joking around, and maybe it was not great, but it wasn't malicious. I don't know, I'm reading into it. And she's putting out there and claiming that I was being malicious. Maybe I can find these texts. Okay, so someone posted on TikTok this full text conversation, and I can't know if any of this is legitimate or not. Could all be faked, but let's keep that in mind as we look at this. And it looks like this is not a cast member. It looks like it's a friend of Jackie's. And so Jackie is saying, hey, can you guys come to my bachelorette party on May 3rd? That must have been last year. Then my wedding day is May 10th. And then someone with the letter M, assuming another friend of Jackie's, says, of course we'll be there. And then the person who actually has this phone says, yes, we'll be there. And then Jackie asks the two of them to come wedding dress shopping on April 29th. And then the owner of the phone apparently said, we haven't gotten the tea yet. I'm thirsty, because we'll kick his ass if he ain't acting right. So apparently this is saying that the friend with the phone has heard things from Jackie saying of complaints, and who knows what the tone of that. It could just be playful. Hey, I love Marshall, but I'd kick his butt if he's going to be bad. Or is it not, I'm sure it's not actual threat of violence, or is it more of, we know Marshall is terrible and he better not be doing bad things, so we don't know. Okay, and I just want to remind everyone that this could all be faked. We also don't know the context necessarily. Famously, the internet will take these things out of context, so I just want to be extremely tentative in drawing any kind of conclusions based on this random thing on TikTok. But here we see Jackie, she says in a new thread, she says, he gives me vibes, y'all. So at first I'm thinking, is she talking about Josh? Because she didn't talk about Marshall in that way. Jackie says, and I kind of hinted at that in my interview, and all hell broke loose. She says, so I had to switch it up. Not sure what that means. It could mean a lot of things. But he, for show, gives me vibes because he used to twerk on the bed, and I told him I was cool of that. And he was like, yeah. So now this time I told him to be more aggressive with me. So is she talking about Marshall this whole time? He's hard for show, but sometimes he can be sweet. And then the person with the phone says, LOL, those light-skinned ones can be a little sweet sometimes. And then there was actually more text that I didn't feel comfortable showing for a number of reasons. There was seemingly a reference to someone being fruity, meaning not a toxic man. I think referring to Marshall, I'm not sure. We don't know that. Fruity could refer to a lot of things. Maybe it's an inside joke. Who knows? Then there was talk of their sexual life from Jackie. I think she was talking about her and Marshall, and Jackie was talking about some private issues that I think should not be out there, and I didn't want to also put that out there. So I feel a little dirty for even looking that, honestly. I mean, it's on the internet, so people are looking at it. They're talking about it. I think that we all should be careful about, imagine for yourself, you have a partner who you're in an intimate relationship with, and you've been together for a few years, and they take a picture of you in bed when you're naked, and you believe, and there's a discussion that they're not going to tweet that picture, and you break up, and then somehow you get famous, and then this person leaks that photo to the press. There might even be laws against this now. Let's just say that maybe it's not a naked photo, but a photo or a video of you doing something that is compromising to your image. And depending on what it is, of course, but if it just reveals things about you that is just private and unfair that it's out there, then one, people shouldn't put those out there. And two, as the public, we shouldn't be looking at it because it just encourages other people to do that. And by looking at it, we're participating in it. It's like standing around someone as they beat someone to death, and we're just watching in a circle, and we're like, well, it's not me. It's like, well, especially if the person doing the thing is doing it because people are looking. So even though millions of other people are looking, every little bit counts. In the same way that you don't litter, hopefully. One person littering isn't going to ruin the planet, but if everyone followed that principle, then you have a problem. So if we click on things that are private and questionable as to where they came from, or questionable as even the validity of it, then we're part of the problem. And then apparently there was a response from Marshall saying, the only sugar I got goes on those effing pancakes. So that's his way of, I think, lightly responding to what was happening there. I don't know if that's real. Maybe on the reunion they'll get into it. And then, I don't know the validity of this, but there was another post somewhere claiming that the post is, I think, from the person who posted those texts between Jackie and two other friends. And it's sort of written in a way that's not super clear, but I think it's a message from the friend that posted to Jackie. And it basically is saying that Jackie was getting all this hate online, and the friends felt bad for Jackie. And Jackie asked the friend to fake posts or death threats that Jackie was getting so that people would feel bad for Jackie and stop doing it. I don't doubt that Jackie was getting death threats. Even if she wasn't, I don't doubt, in fact, I saw that she was getting tremendous bullying. I mean, if you're just a casual observer of Jackie online, you might not see it. But if you're at ground zero for something like that, of an internet mob that is out as several internet mobs, and maybe not just mobs, but like just regular people that don't usually mob up will just feel completely okay just going after you because that's the culture of watching reality TV. So I don't doubt that Jackie was being attacked relentlessly and pathologically. Yeah, I don't doubt that. But apparently the, at least allegation or the way that this is being written, it appears that maybe Jackie was asking a friend to manufacture some death threats. You know, honestly, I guess I could see someone in Jackie's position saying, there's a lot of really awful things that are happening to me, but there's no comment that really fully encapsulates the way that this is all making me feel. And I've been in that position before. And I could see someone in Jackie's position saying, like, if I just show them what people are saying, I'm worried that people won't really understand how horrible the internet is being to me right now. So maybe I just need to manufacture this death threat thing so that will just be undeniably horrible in the way I'm being treated. And so I'll just create, I don't know. But I think from all this, and again, it all could be manufactured and just fake, but apparently this is essentially saying that the Jackie got upset because what the friend posted was actually not helpful, and now Jackie and the friend are in conflict, and the friend is maybe saying, hey, don't attack me. In fact, I'm going to out you in some way. Like, kind of looks like that, but I don't know. There's just a lot of options there. Potentially a fair amount of relatability in there, too. I mean, we could read into this and be like, oh, and of course, I'm looking at all the comments, and everyone is 100% sure that Jackie is this horrible, evil person that is manipulative and toxic and a gaslighter. And all those things could be true, but, we just don't have enough information to say much. I kept reading this and thinking, okay, at what point am I really going to see like a clear indication? It's just hard to tell. And apparently this friend is chastising Jackie for publishing a fake. So it sounds like there were a lot of really horrible DMs sent to Jackie, which I do not doubt. and they came up with a scheme to have the friends make fake accounts and then DM her things that she could take a screenshot. I mean, I could see someone like Jackie saying, well, I want to take screenshots of this, but I don't want these people giving me death threats to have more reason to try to kill me. So I need sort of anonymous. Now, of course, you can have ways of blacking out the person, but even so, like if someone who gives you a death threat and they see, oh, that's a DM I sent to her, you don't want to provoke people. But anyway, so it sounds like they did do the scheme. They made the fake accounts or something. They sent her the DMs. Then she took a screenshot of that. She shared it, and the internet figured out it was fake right away. And then she was getting all this backlash. And then the rest of it seemingly happened along those lines. And it is saying that, you were planning to say that Marshall called you a bad name and that you were planning to lie about that. And also the person is saying that there's some kind of issue. Well, I don't know. I feel like this is also getting into private issues that shouldn't be out there.
True.
So for people that don't understand, there were some texts to her friend leaked, and she was talking about you in a way that was not kind, or not kind. It was more like, oh yeah, go check it out for yourself. I don't want to put words wrong.
Okay, I think they're referring to the text that we were looking at, but I can't be sure.
But we want to know your part in this. So you said it was from both of you.
Yeah.
What is the context?
And why didn't you ask Jackie about those texts? Maybe they worked out beforehand. Jackie's like, I'm not going to talk about this. Or they did ask, and Jackie's like, I'm not answering that. I don't understand. You asked some pretty tough questions to Irina and others. Why wouldn't you ask this? Like, Jackie, what's going on? Maybe they're just thinking, look, we'll just let the data speak for itself. I don't know.
Calling me, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I'm asking about what
I'm going to say.
I apologize.
Yeah, so I felt like it was my turn to make a jab. And so I said, you got a strong jawline. Like, you could have been a man for all I know. And it was wrong. I know.
Okay. I think it's, at least if that's what he said, it's commendable that he's saying it. Yeah, the groans in the crowd. So yeah, obviously there's a long tradition in our society of shaming a lot of things. One, trans people. Two, women for having masculine features, what are considered to be masculine features, I should say. Three, as a way of trying to humiliate someone, associate them with something. Yeah, not good, not okay.
It was wrong.
Wait, did you say this while y'all were signing your marriage certificate?
No. This was the night before we met my family. And I held myself accountable in that moment, and I knew it was wrong because she took very clear offense to it.
So I think what he's saying is that they were having a fight or some kind of heated discussion, and she said to him that he was sweet, and the slurs that we saw in terms of I don't know what word we want to put to it. It's like there's got to be some term of what this is, where you are trying to insult a man for not being a toxic male. We should have some sort of term for that. I'm sure there will be eventually, because that is a really horrific thing to do and a highly problematic thing from a variety of angles. And so it sounds like that's what he's saying that was happening. And so he shot back with, okay, fine. Well, if you want to do that to me, then I'm going to do this to you. I'll show you how it feels. And then it sounds like he immediately apologized for it. It doesn't make it okay. Two wrongs don't make it right.
And we're just learning each other. We don't really know what each other's triggers are. And so I thought that it was a safe space, because she's coming at me, calling me out of my own sexual preference.
She was saying those things to your face, the things that we saw on text. She was saying them to you.
So you're saying you think this was a situation where both of you were joking, but it went too far?
It went too far.
Okay.
Okay. He's saying we were joking. It almost sounded like he was saying we were sort of trying to jab at each other. And she was jabbing in a joking way about him not being a toxic male, and thus, making fun of him. And then he's like, okay, if you're going to play that game, boom, boom, boom. So if we saw it, maybe it wouldn't seem as bad as it's seeming. And, people have flaws. Marshall has flaws. He also has a lot of positive qualities. We don't excuse bad behavior, but we put it into context. Same with Jackie. Same with Micah. Same with Irina. I've been doing that with everybody. Everyone's complicated. And the notion that somehow there are some people in the world and on this show that are 100% good, and then some people who are 100% bad, and what do we even mean by that, is of course absurd. So, we're getting to know Marshall, and I'm sure if we got to know him even more, that there'd be a lot more problems with his personality, with his impulses, with his attitudes or something. Because the emergence of that playful joke is telling. Because if someone were insulting me that way, I can't say that that would be something that would even emerge for me as an option. It just wouldn't occur to me to think like that was parody, that was like, okay, you're going to say that. I'm not saying I'm better. I'm just saying maybe there'd be a different set of issues that I have that would result from me. But the point is that there's some work that I think he might need to do, as we all do. We've all internalized transphobia and all sorts of bigotry, and none of us can escape that unless you grew up in a bubble somewhere or in a different culture that doesn't have it. But if you grew up in the United States, there's, in my estimation, no way to avoid it. So we all have to purge ourselves of that, and it sounds like he does too.
And I take full accountability for that. And
I don't know how I'd feel if he talked about me like that. I get where
I
I
like
get it.
yeah,
like your
for sure.
joke.
It was definitely wrong, and I take accountability for that.
Yeah.
However, I did not say a specific term.
You didn't use a derogatory
I did not use a
word.
derogatory term. No, I did not.
Okay, so it sounds like either he's suspecting or he knows that Jackie is claiming that he used an actual slur, which we could imagine maybe which one it was.
Will not be saying here today, by the way. You guys can imagine
Yeah,
what that word is.
I did not say that word.
Okay.
And that word isn't even in my vocabulary.
So another thing,
So we could see how he could say it and doesn't want to admit it or doesn't remember saying it. We could also imagine how he would say what he said or something in that ballpark, and Jackie would remember a different set of words and thinks that, or even will amp it up. I mean, so getting to those texts and that exchange, I mean, there's just so many different questions I have of it, most namely if any of it is valid. Jackie hasn't confirmed. We haven't heard from the friend, at least from my understanding. It looked like it was real, but who knows? And if at least some of that is real, if not all of it, then what does it say about? So on one hand, the conclusion would be that Jackie is a liar and someone who involves herself in manipulative conspiracies to manipulate the public by coming up with this fake DM situation. And thus, generally speaking, she's manipulative and a liar, and she cheated on him, of course, and then she lied about it, of course, and so it all kind of fits in that narrative. There's another possibility that the show did edit Jackie to make it look like she cheated on him, and that she was legitimately getting threatening DMs, which I don't doubt, and she just, for whatever reason, wanted to make a fake account because she just felt it would play better or something, and she made a mistake and flubbed it terribly. So there's a possibility that she isn't terribly homophobic or terribly anti-healthy male, but is a little bit, because a lot of people are, and exhibits signs of that degree of issue in the texts and in the way that she talks, and that the two of them had a discuss. I don't know. There's a wide range of things going on here. There's certainly a lot of data pointing in the direction that there's a serious problem going on with Jackie and her attitudes and the way she sees men and the way she sees people and the oppression that she participates in. There's certainly a lot of evidence in that direction. There's some evidence that Marshall has, I guess there's some evidence that Marshall has kind of a complex around gender, which of course we all kind of do, and that he is still working on it. It sounds like he emerged out of something. He said, in an interview that his emotions used to dominate him, and now he wants to allow himself to have emotions. So he's still developing, he's still growing, and he might have some residual, some of the propagators of bigotry are people who have been the target of a lot of bigotry. And it's hard not to internalize a lot of the bigotry, to go along with it, or just be brainwashed into it, even though consciously you know that it's not okay. And for some of us, it could be a lifetime of trying to wrestle with that. And so maybe this is another part of his gender liberation around a lot of issues regarding gender, not just around toxic masculinity and healthy masculinity, but around what it is to be a woman and how women can be, or how trans people can be, because you can imagine people attacking him for, just maybe being trans or being a woman, or he wants to be, who knows, in terms of the sort of attacks or internalizations he's had. So I don't know. I am not enthusiastic that I am now seeing a flaw of his, but of course we realize everyone has flaws.
I'm just doing this because you couldn't remember the video.
Yeah.
That she mentioned in the video was the ring. Oh my God, the ring heard round the world. This damn ring. At first I was like, what? Okay, what's going on here?
Yeah, and I guess I should have said at the time when Jackie responded to that question, she's like, yeah, he just wanted it because he wanted to propose to someone else. Okay, then give him the stupid ring. It's not your ring. Why are you keeping the ring? Regardless of what he wanted to do with it. If he wanted to throw it off a bridge, why would you keep it? It doesn't make any sense.
So the reason why I asked for the ring back was because it was a symbol of my love. We picked out those rings, and in that moment, I looked at that ring and I said, that's for her. And I felt like she didn't deserve to have that symbol of my love.
Applause. Yeah.
I did not want to propose to anybody else.
Yeah, okay.
That wasn't the case. And that's really wild that she would think that, because she was literally the only person that I was worried about in the pods.
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence that Jackie is the sort of defensive individual. She has a style of defense that is throwing as many random things at the wall as possible. I can't know that, but we saw that post by her saying, and the ring, the reason why I kept it is because he didn't buy it. So that was her first defense. And maybe in the interim, she realized that wasn't flying with the public. And so, you could imagine her just coming up with any old thing to say that she feels like is helpful or makes her case. But regardless of even if that's true, like I said, okay, fine, he wanted to propose to someone else. That should even give more reason to give him the ring, because he actually has a use for it. What are you going to do with it? Give it back to him. If he wasn't going to do anything with the ring, then yeah, if he was going to throw it off a bridge, then, you could make a slight argument that it's like, well, he was just going to throw it off a bridge. So I just, but she doesn't say anything. To me, all she would have to say is, I kept it because it was a memory of our relationship and I wanted that. It's special to me. I doubt that she would say that. I doubt she even thinks it, but there's just a lot of other things you could say. Or he accused me of accepting the ring not in good faith, and so I wanted to keep it as a way of showing him that I did keep it in good faith. That's why he said he wanted it back, because that it wasn't, by me accepting it, it wasn't real. It was real when I accepted it. So I felt like I was doing him kind of a favor emotionally by telling him no. She didn't really say that explicitly. I mean, she kind of did, but she could have laid it on a little thicker at the time or later. But yeah. Now, I'm pretty sure that for Marshall, he doesn't really care that much about the ring being kept. So I don't think it's too much of a bother to him.
How many dates do you classify dating?
Oh.
Because we went on one singular date. And although we were talking back and forth, texting, so back it up. Keisha sent me a very beautiful voice message the day after Jackie and I broke up. Hey, I'm thinking about you.
Okay, so maybe someone else in the pods, it sounds like, maybe. And they had some communication and they had one date. Okay.
I know you really loved her. that really sucks.
How did she know you broke up? Because I didn't hear yet.
Social media.
Oh, because Jackie posted something. I'm putting it together now. Okay.
So, I mean, it was pretty much known.
Okay, that's interesting. And of course, at the time, the world wasn't paying attention to Jackie's social media, presumably. And so maybe no one took a screenshot of that, but that's the claim. And we could imagine that happening. It just seems like if any of this, if even just a quarter of what's all been alleged is true about Jackie, it just points to a lack of judgment, because there's so many other ways and again, it's just in those alleged texts that she didn't like all the attacks that she was getting, and she was trying to get out ahead of it, which I think is a good move. You know, I think about the way Micah and Irina got out ahead of it, which I don't know if that worked, but at the very least, when I saw their responses after the first 5 episodes aired, especially Irina's, I thought, well, that was a good move. You know, there was a lot of things there that could possibly tamp the bullying and the mobs online down a little bit. Maybe it didn't. Maybe it just fueled the fire. I'm sure it did. It often does. But I don't know. I could see it helping a little bit. At the very least, it was a valiant effort. And you see that, and you contrast that with Jackie. It's like there's just this kind of flailing aspect to the way that she responds. She could really benefit from having a social media consultant at her side. It's possible that Irina and Micah do have a professional. It would be actually prudent to do that, right? You could really salvage your image, maybe your career, a lot of your relationships. It kind of looks like that with Jackie, at least allegedly in terms of the exchange, that some of her friends, or at least one of them, is now having massive conflict with Jackie because of the involvement of like, hey, send a DM and then throwing people under the bus. And it's like, well, you're going to throw me on the bus. And then where are you at the end of that process? So I don't know. It just points to Jackie just having not good guidance internally and externally.
I was like, in the moment, I was like, oh, you know what? How you doing? Let's talk.
Yeah.
And we explored it, but I just couldn't move forward because I wanted to distance myself from that horrible experience that I had, and I just needed time to work on myself.
So Marshall, obviously, she said quite a bit in that video, but
Okay, so Marshall's saying that he met up with her once, but ultimately he just didn't want to have another relationship because he needed time to recover, which, you know, makes sense.
There's a lot that I would like to say. However, I feel like we both deserve to just move on from this, and the whole you versus me thing needs to die immediately.
Yeah, good for him. And that is the smart move, because it doesn't help him to get into a tit for tat with her. When you fight, there's this idea that somehow you're trying to win, but everyone loses. I deal with this much more often in my office with couples. We all do this with our partners. We're trying to win. You know, there's an argument. I was right and you were wrong. And there's this notion that somehow if I could just win, then I'll win and everything will be better. And that's never the case. By trying to win, everyone loses.
Trying to make something shake between, not shake between us, but you're trying to make something out of nothing, and it needs to stop because it's only causing more damage than good. So I don't have any feelings. I haven't had feelings for a year, so let's just, I don't know, call it truce. But I mean, I've offered that before.
Yeah. That's the mature Marshall move.
I don't know, call it truce. But I mean, I've offered that before.
And then, did I miss something? We've all heard that before. So was that a dig that he just said?
I don't know, call it truce. But I mean, I've offered that before.
I'm missing something. Apparently the audience is picking up on something. Maybe you're picking up on something. So is that some sort of veiled attack that he's, we've all heard that before? It's called a truce. We've all heard that before. I don't know.
There's a lot that's going into this, and I'm just going to direct this to the public. At this point, this is not about Jackie and Marshall anymore. Let that be bygones. Focus, let them move on. Let me move on. and just forget it. Jackie and Josh are happy. She's happy.
Yeah, good for him. And it's interesting that I feel like this is the first time we've heard these kinds of statements. We've heard a few of these, and I wonder if there's a cultural shift happening where the mobs are being identified and being called out as what they are, which are extremely toxic and abusive mobs of people online, just ruining lives and destroying careers and literally causing some people to kill themselves. It happens. Causing content creators to shut down their content creation. It happens every day, and it's happening more and more. And I see these stories, and I have this fascination with these stories, honestly, because of the things that I've been through. It's like this weird support system or support group when I see these other YouTube channels that will shut down. You know, like with William Osmond, I talked about him back in the day, and he's kind of coming back a little bit on YouTube, but he's not nearly how he used to be. And I feel such solidarity with people in this position. You know, these kind of very, very minor celebrities like myself, like Marshall, like William Osmond. I mean, these two fellas are much more popular and well-known than I am, of course. But when you cross a certain threshold, and it doesn't even have to be that high of a threshold in terms of notoriety, because I would get attacked years and years ago when basically like my mom and 3 of my friends were listening to the podcast. You know, it would still happen. So I wonder if we're actually seeing a sea change, which would really be encouraging to me, because it's got to happen. And there's a chance that in 5 years, it'll be passé for mobs to do this, or when mobs do it, they will be quickly identified, and the average person will say, well, that's not okay, that's crossing the line. Because I feel like for too long, we've had this just free reign of people getting away with it. Maybe websites that will also like shut it down, moderators will say, no, you can't, that's crossing the line. No, because it is. It's not okay. You know, you can talk, and you can criticize, and you can gossip, but the ruthlessness, and if you've never been a target of it, then you might not have any idea what's actually happening. I've been the target of it, and it is, and I've talked about it a little bit, I won't bore you with the details again, but it's particular. It's almost like the way that you'll hear someone having been in an abusive marriage, and if you've never, I'm sure you all understand, because I talk about it all the time, and or you've educated yourself, and or you're a professional, and or you've been through it yourself. You know what it is like, the syndrome of someone being in an abusive relationship. Like the idea that people stay in an abusive relationship, or the phenomenon that people will, on average, I think it's like they will leave 7 times before they finally leave their abusive partner. And commonly you will hear people say like, well, they're weak, or if it was really abusive, you would have left a long time ago, these ignorant statements. And when we see that now, we think, well, the person with that attitude is weird, right? But that ignorance is not like, sometimes it's willful, but sometimes they're just ignorant. They don't know what it's like to be in an abusive relationship. They haven't been close enough to it to know all of the ins and outs and the factors that play into why someone would stay or go back. And similarly, for people that have been attacked online, if you haven't gone through it and you haven't educated yourself, and there's not enough awareness in society, there can just be this lack of empathy, or lack of understanding, lack of sympathy. And they'll just be like, well, you're a famous person, and then that propagates the abuse even further. The mobs will say stuff like that. Paparazzi is kind of in this camp as well. It's like, well, you shouldn't be a famous person. If you want to be a famous person, then you're just going to get paparazzi. You're just going to get mobs of people online attacking you. That's what you signed up for. And that's like saying, hey, you decided to marry an abusive man, or you decided to marry a man. You get what you paid for. That it's just, them's the breaks. That's men, or that's the way, that's relationships are. Deal with it. And I wonder if we're actually, I get, maybe I'm just wishful thinking, but I'm glad that it has been discussed, because it's just not okay. And I even feel like for myself, it's been an emerging understanding. I remember years ago when cancel culture started, because, that's a part of this. And of course, there's some legitimacy to cancel culture because some people legit deserve to be canceled. But that notion of mobbing and because some people have been canceled by toxic bully online mobs that should never have been canceled, right? And when I first started hearing these questions, because people would ask me, it's like, what do you think about cancel culture? What do you think about cancel culture? And this would have been 5, 6, 7 years ago. I remember responding because from my point of view, which was extremely limited at the time, I would say, well, most of the time, cancel culture is valid and justified because that's what I saw. And I cringe at the way I responded 5, 6, 7 years ago because of that. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know that there were these mobs online until it started happening more and more to me. And then sadly, I had to go through it in order for me to start going, well, wait, maybe some of the things that people are saying are valid. Now, there's a whole other wing of this that I won't bore you with, but I just feel like I need to add is some people will say blanketly that any group online that is advocating for something is a ridiculous cancel culture mob of people, and that's just not true. We as people will engage in justice and activism in a variety of contexts, online included, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad movement online just because a bunch of people are getting together and maybe even going after a politician or a news anchor or something. It's not always, by the way that it looks. You have to have an understanding of the context and the meaning and the hopes. It doesn't give activists full reign to dox and to harm, but I just want to throw that out there because sometimes people will just say, see, cancel culture is wrong, and anyone who engages in online activism is a ridiculous person. And, it's complicated, it's case by case. So, so I'm glad that Marshall and others are calling it out.
Chelsea, I'm going to give you a quick tour. Let's go ahead and get started.
So here's our entry into our home. Oh, yep, we got dog toys everywhere.
Everywhere.
Here is the money space. Here's our living area. We love this. We have almost panoramic view.
Yeah, I can relate. We have a bunch of dog toys everywhere. I'm always terrified that one of us are going to step on one in the middle of the night and break our neck. But yeah, so it looks like they're actually downtown Seattle, like the proper downtown, what they call the West Edge. I think they renamed it the West Edge. So the waterfront's right there, the Sound, obviously, you can see Alki and the industrial area to the left. Yeah, that is a very expensive apartment or condo. I'm going to take a guess and say, given the view, because sometimes that'll double the price and it looks new, so it has all new things. I'm going to take a guess and say that is at least $1.5 million.
Of Seattle, the Puget Sound. People want to know, where's the pink? You can see it. Here's my favorite corner. I call this my happy corner. And
wow, I mean, not to dox them, and I won't, but I actually know exactly what building that is. It's by the landmarks, But yeah, that's a nice building. And actually, I think those are rental apartments. Nice, really nice, and it's really great because you don't have to drive anywhere. You can walk to all the stores and to fun things to do. There's a lot of fun things to do in that area.
We're definitely looking forward to seeing your love stories continue to unfold as time goes on.
Thank you so much, everyone here, for being with us, including our audience, including all of you at home. Thank you for being patient.
Guys.
We appreciate it.
Season 4!
That's it, season 4!
In the can! All right, guys.
Okay, so that's the end of season 4. Been quite a journey. I don't know if I'm biased, but I think this season was the most entertaining and most interesting, which sometimes those don't coincide. There's so much to talk about, so much to absorb. There's so many things that happened. I think it was good that they, for the first time, allowed people to be more flexible upon meeting each other, allowing people to break up. I mean, allowing, but giving that option more readily and allowing people to potentially even stay in the show, and showing that Zach and Bliss, that model of having switched it up soon after meeting in person and still salvaging, because the show, I'm pretty sure they want people to get married. they want at least that theme of the show of true love happening. True love. And so I'm glad that they were allowing themselves to do that. It almost seemed that the cast members were more honest. They were more forthcoming. There was a lot more, I think, satisfying revelations. There was also a lot of healthy, differentiated, mature behavior from several cast members, particularly in the healthy masculinity area, but really a lot of different areas. I will also commend the hosts. I thought that on average, in terms of other hosts of other end of season get-togethers, they did a top-notch job. I think a lot of people attack them. I think particularly there's a lot of people attacking her, which I don't really understand. I can't relate to at the very least. Sure, there were things that could have been done differently, but I challenge any of y'all to do what she did and do it even close to how well she did it or better. It's hard. I mean, it's near impossible. There's so many things you have to do, which I'm sure y'all know. But yeah, there were questions that I wished were asked, but there were many questions, the two of them asked, and follow-up questions. And this is something that I talk with my trainees a lot, is it's one thing to ask a good question to a client. It's another thing to have a good follow-up question to a question. Because frequently in therapy, the initial answer is not the depth or the specificity or the answer that is really going to help. And for y'all that even aren't clinicians, you can think about this in your personal lives. When you ask a question of your child or of your family member or your spouse or your boss or your employee, especially if it's important of a topic, the first question, even if you feel like the answer was given to you, at the very least you should check in and make sure that you really understand what they're saying. Like, how do you think we're doing as a team regarding parenting our kids? And the first answer from your spouse is, I think we're doing great. Or, I don't know, I haven't thought about it really. And if you just take that first answer, then that tells you something potentially, but often there's a much more rich response that you're going to get if you have a follow-up. The follow-up question exhibits that you're interested in more. You're interested in actually having a deeper conversation, and you're not just wanting a very quick answer. So, you follow it up with, okay, you think it's great, but, what's your overall, tell me more, what's going on? So things like that can be very helpful, and to not assume that someone's first answer encapsulates everything that's there, which I think everyone knows. But anyway, so the hosts were, I thought, pretty good. And I thought in the reunion, there was a lot of positive behavior being exhibited. There were some issues. There were some blind spots, like really, I think, I don't want to say, like I said, going after Micah, but exploring some of the issues more pointedly with Micah. What was going on? And maybe even more about Micah and Irina. Like, so why were you doing that in the pods? Like, you say that you were being selfish. Why were you being selfish? What was going on there? And if they hem and haw, I might throw some of the theories out there. Do you think it was this? Was it that? I think that would actually have been really helpful, because there are so many bullies and so many victims of bullies that could have benefited from that being explored. But that's just me. Maybe no one cares about that. They had limited time. I will say it's nice to see, particularly Chelsea and Kwame together, seemingly very happy. We did a tour of their apartment, and for me anyway, as a viewer, it feels nice to see that their relationship is solid, because, and I didn't react to this, but Kwame pointed out that the TV show highlights like 1% of the overall relationship, and it makes it look a certain way. The other thing they were talking about, I didn't realize that this discourse was happening online, but it sounds like people were speculating, not even speculating, but claiming that Chelsea was in control of him, and he was scared and only said yes to agree to marry her because he was terrified of her. And I'm just wondering what's going on inside people's minds that would make them, one, think that based on what they saw, and two, assume that and assert that. Like, it says more about those individuals than it says anything. I mean, it's a lot of a blank screen that you can just project whatever you got going on for yourself onto. And so they responded to that, and yeah, that's pretty awful. I did see some of that earlier on, like these ideas of colonialization and racism and dehumanization being applied to Chelsea. And yeah, I mean, is race an issue in the relationship? We don't know, but it would be weird if it wasn't at least a part of what was going on. But that specific thing, like, could it be happening? Sure. But just based on what you're seeing, I just find that to, again, say more about the person assuming that than about their relationship. The other thing I want to say is it's been a journey with you. You've been with me as I watch this, particularly if you've been one of those individuals who watches all the videos. You know, the amount of things that you've thought as I've been thinking and saying, things you've agreed with, things you've disagreed with, commenting below, supporting each other below, communicating with me in the comments below, emailing me, being a patron, and DMing me on Patreon. You know, it's been quite a conversation. It's been gratifying. The reason that gets me up in the morning sometimes is that I get to do this, and I wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't for you. Even if you're not a patron, if you're you're going to hear my dog barking because I'm pretty sure there's a delivery of some sort. And, you know, he's a good guard dog. And so you have, just by watching the video, the way that it works is that the ads that you sit through or even just click away from, we get a tiny little fraction of a penny every time that happens. And, you know, it adds up. So and thus I can actually pay my bills and pay my family's bills, and I don't have to work at the university, and I don't have to have a large practice anymore. And so it's, I guess, kind of a win-win in that you get this sort of content and I get to make it. I love doing this. I really do. I grow a lot. I've learned a lot. You know, it's one thing to study and to read research and to be a clinician and to supervise. It's another thing to watch these shows because there's a particular angle at human experience that is presented to us. So when I watch this show, it gives me an opportunity to maybe provide that to the internet, but also gives me an opportunity to think clinically about vignettes, is what we call them, these little clinical vignettes, and then having questions and application of concepts and wrestling with one's own countertransference. I find that it, for you clinicians out there, I'm guessing you'd be able to relate to this, and maybe as you watch, you have a similar experience of just like, you know, this is helpful clinically. I want to thank you for going on the journey with me, not only because the ads, which is, I guess, the secondary thing, but mostly because of the emotional side to it. It feels good. You know, I look at the thumbs up, I look at the subscriber count, I look at the view count, and it feels good to feel like I'm helpful, to feel like I have a purpose, to feel needed, needed is a funny word, but to feel like I'm a part of people's lives, you know, that people have a routine, they'll wake up and people will tell, and I like on Instagram, if you DM me like a kind of snapshot of the sort of environment that you watch the show, or a screenshot of you, I don't know, people will be on their couch and they'll just take a shot of their laptop or their TV, and I don't know, it just puts it into context, because, you know, I don't do this to just put it out there and I forget it. I really do want it to feel like a real thing with real humans and you as a part of it. And so, and a lot of you have done that. And so it feels really good. It feels like, I don't know, you know, we all want to matter in the world, right? And I feel like I matter. I feel like my life is worth something, you know, that I have worth, that I have a value. And we all want that. And it gets us up in the morning. It gives us the fuel to get through the difficult moments. You know, I've been through some difficult moments with this podcast and YouTube channel. And if I didn't have you, then I would have given it up a long time ago. And yeah, maybe we can all take an inventory of what we've taken away. Some takeaways, if you will, from this season. Things like bullies are out there. Things like people are multifaceted. We can have, I hope, empathy even for bullies. That bullies aren't this one-dimensional creature. They have a lot of potential sides of themselves that are relatable and sympathetic. toxic masculinity is officially dead to us. I mean, to see so much healthy masculinity on a show, it gives me so much hope for the future. That sometimes giving people a second chance. I mean, Bliss could have easily been prideful and said, no, I'm not going to be with you. You broke up with me. I'm not going to give you the satisfaction. But she gave it a try, and good for her. That with Bliss's dad, when people talk down to you and make you feel stupid and belittle you, to differentiate as best as you can and maybe call it out. Just be like, you know what? I'm not stupid. I understand that. Thanks for offering. To understand that sometimes people fall asleep when you're talking to them and try not to take it personally. I think another potential takeaway that Irina might be exhibiting is that she, and I didn't say this at the time, but there's a lot of indications that Irina has significant traumas, significant terror types of traumas where she was being terrorized, maybe even physically. I don't know. But the fact that she had a full-on panic attack upon meeting him, and she kept using the word creepy, and then even today she would use a phrase like, I didn't feel safe. There wasn't any indication that she was being threatened or that Zach was a threat. And so that kind of distortion, that kind of projection is often a result of trauma reactivity. You can have someone who was abused physically, sexually, who will enter into a situation where there's no threat and no indication of it, not even like your gut instinct is right, because sometimes you can sense like, oh, I feel something, and then it's true. So say that's not actually the case. And individuals can have tremendous reactivity, which makes sense. Like a common example I work with is someone was sexually abused, and they later on in their life fall in love, get married, feel good about the relationship, and they're having sex with their partner, and something about the sexual activity or the smell or something triggers the survivor of the abuse, and suddenly they're screaming and pushing the person away, and they're saying they don't feel safe. Pretty common scenario. Survivors will often really shame themselves for this. There's nothing shameful. It's very normal. And therapy and couple therapy can really help with this to, get people to understand not only the survivor, but also the partner, to help sort of smooth that over and set up a path of understanding and flexibility and safety and recovery. And that's a scenario where there isn't a threat the way that I framed it, and yet the person absolutely feels threat in the moment because of something being triggered. That's the nature of PTSD. And so for Irina, it's possible. I don't know, and I'm not diagnosing her with it. And I also don't even know if Zach isn't a threat. But the way that it looked is that something like that could have happened. And so that's another takeaway, is that at the time when I was reacting to it, I hadn't had that as a part, or did I? I might have had that as a distant possibility, but I guess as a part of this is a takeaway is the people who are the most insecure, the people who are the most, the lowest self-esteemed individuals, the people who are the most afraid, sometimes will be the people who come across as the least afraid and as the least triggered and as the least low self-esteemed. They'll come across as having tremendous, grandiose self-esteem. So there's that. I think another takeaway is, even though for me, this is one of my takeaways, is that Irina has really taken me on a journey that on one hand, her behavior was just flat out deplorable. And we're hearing about other behavior that was flat out deplorable. And we're hearing that there was 10 times as much deplorable behavior, which I would imagine. At the same time, for me, I feel like I can understand her and have compassion for her and see a human in there. At the same time, even as she's being human, she still has blind spots and naivete that is still present. I talked about this when she was talking, that she seems to not really fully comprehend even what other people are telling her in this moment. Not because she's not intelligent, but because I think she's still developing, she's still wrestling with things. She's still trying to develop the ability to recover and feel safe enough such that she can extend herself into other people's experience and really not be selfish, So I think remembering that, because, in a lot of these shows, we often see just the behavior, but we don't get a chance, like we did on this show, to really hear more there, the background, the experience of the bully, and to say, oh, because so often on these reality TV shows, there's someone that's like this, your Big Eds, these kinds of people, your Shakes, who else? Your Shaynas. And it seems from the surface that these people are just waking up in the morning and saying, I'm going to be a jerk face. But when you hear Irina, I don't know, I hope you hear that there's depth there, there's a human there, there's some goodness there, and some pretty big issues, a lot of barriers to refraining from being a bully, and a lot of motivation to be a bully because of how much terror she was under. Doesn't justify it, but it does provide some pathway to that, other than she just wakes up and says, I'm going to be a jerk. Another takeaway is that for Micah, she could have all these aspects. She could be an absolute monster of a bully, and also have, in her way, wanted to be with Paul and was felt very rejected and felt sad, and we can relate to that. All those things can happen. And for yourself, some of you need to say this to yourself, that you're allowed to have flaws. You're allowed to have issues. You're allowed to have made mistakes. You're allowed to continue to make mistakes. And giving yourself that grace and having that model of understanding that everyone has a lot of facets, and someone can be good, can be human, can be compassionate, can be altruistic, can be worthy, an important member of a society or a relationship or a community, and also have some very noticeable, harmful flaws and behaviors and patterns. Doesn't justify it, but we don't have to black and white others, and we don't have to black and white ourselves. When we accept that, then we can work on it. Shame really destroys our ability to work on things. We either fall into it and feel we're worthless, why try? Or we deny and say, I don't have those problems. And of course, interpersonally, when we have partners or people that are close to us and we don't acknowledge that or allow for that, then people suppress more, we suppress. So allowing everyone to be human and be the way that all humans are, which is usually, well, not all humans, but the vast majority, 99%, are good with some flaws that are probably not going to go away anytime soon, but with some work and with making up for, apologizing and making up for things, we can make things right. All of us will continue to commit some sort of, violation is kind of a weird word, but we'll all commit transgressions upon our loved ones, upon others. I'll commit a transgression against you. That's because I'm human. And if we can all accept that, and when I say that out loud, it's like I feel like I really do need to accept that and just say, if we trust each other and we build a relationship together, then it allows for that. The last thing I'll say, this just reminds me, it was very poignant. I was, about 30 years old, and I had this really good friend of mine for 10 years-ish, and we didn't see each other as often when we became older, and I was meeting up with her, and the last time we had been together, there had been some tension, and I can't remember what it was about, but I said something to her. I was like, so are we good? Because, last time we were together, there was that thing, and she said this phrase like immediately. She just said, so Kirk, if our relationship was that fragile that what happened last time would actually harm or end our friendship, then we don't really have a friendship, or something like that. Or our friendship is strong enough, is way stronger than anything like that could harm, something like that. And it really just blew my mind, this. And it was so, it doesn't mean it erases the bad thing, but it does mean that, when you have trust and you have dedication, then, when you commit a transgression or you're worried about tension, it really lessens the blow and the anxiety, right? And then thus we can actually talk about it and recover from it. We don't have to run from it or defend ourselves against it, Because if I didn't know that she felt that way, I might have said, well, it was your fault, because I'd try to deflect blame, or I would just try to act like it never happened, and that doesn't do any good. And so, we can strive to have those kind of relationships. And in a sense, I want that with you. And I feel like that's building, and it's a lot there, the back and forth that I'll have with people. And, I need to do that. There's obvious things you can do for me in that way in the comments, just kind of being nice and considering my feelings when you're giving me feedback, which feedback is fine, but just considering feelings. Someone, by the time this video airs, it'll be long gone in terms of the past, but I had apparently skipped a scene. I saw it, but I didn't react to it, or I didn't mention it or something. And someone said, I'm very disappointed that you didn't get that scene. You didn't watch it. And I'm very disappointed in you. And a lot of people upvoted it. And, the rest of the comment all was fine, but it was that first phrase of just like, I'm really disappointed in you. I'm really disappointed that you didn't see it. And I'm thinking, disappointed? What does that mean? I mean, it could mean a lot of things, but it could mean something really quite hurtful to me of like, well, so I'm your trained monkey and you wanted me to do something and I didn't, and I've disappointed you? I don't understand. And, I do my best, and I can't react to everything because if I did, these videos, they're already long anyway. I feel like I yammer as it is. And so sometimes I'll see a scene and I'll be like, well, I don't know if it's worth sucking up time on a video for that. And sometimes I'll just miss things. Things will just go over my head. I don't register things all the time. I think that's normal. And, things will register for you that I won't register. Anyway, point is that there was that thing. And then someone, and I was looking at the replies, and one person said, I get what you're saying, but I don't understand why you're disappointed in him. I don't think that's fair. To be disappointed in him. And I appreciated that. And I'm not saying that I recommend people defend me online. I'm really not recommending that because I don't want to see fighting. But I did appreciate it. I'm just like, hey, I get it, but you don't have to be disappointed in him. Maybe you don't mean that way, but... And so anyway, there's all that kind of trust building that I get from you, and I can do it for you as well by responding to your comments and providing content that, when I watch content online or podcasts of certain content providers that I follow, the takes that they have, the consistency, I wonder, I was just like, oh, I wonder what they think. This thing will come out in astronomy or something, and I'll look at an astronomy YouTube channel and I'll be like, are they going to see it the way I see it? And then they do. And so it feels reassuring to have that stability, to have that validation of how I feel. And so I feel like there's a number of things I can do for you in that way. And so I don't know, a two-way street. And through that building of trust, we can learn that even when there are disappointments, that it's okay, that we're not on the brink of being rejected, that you can commit a transgression and I can commit a transgression, but this relationship is bigger than all that. Tune in next time when I watch season 5. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.